Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's a pretty high-stakes investigation right into the core of the modern technology race.
It really is. We're going to be extracting strategy and even some philosophy from a huge stack of sources centered on just one figure, Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia.
Exactly. And when you dig into this material, I mean, we're talking several really deep conversations with him. It's not just a technical history.
No, not at all. It's a rare blueprint for success in, probably the most dynamic industry on Earth. And layered on top of that are these surprisingly candid insights into the national strategies that are driving this whole AI race.
So our goal here is to find that high-level common sense, the big picture stuff, and the incredible story of fragility that's right at the foundation of the company powering this whole revolution.
And the most surprising bit of common sense, it starts in politics, of all places.
It does. The sources open with these anecdotes about Huang's interactions with former President Trump. And he characterized the president as an incredibly good listener.
Yeah, someone with a really clear focus on, practical common sense policies.
And it sounds almost too simple. But the strategy discussed at the very beginning of that administration, which the sources claim was the essential precursor for the AI boom we're seeing now, it all boils down to two things.
Just two fundamental principles. The first one was the vital importance of onshore manufacturing.
Right. And that's such a powerful idea. It wasn't just about bringing jobs back, which is, the political narrative you always hear.
Not at all. This was framed as fundamental national security. It was about making sure that critical tech, especially semiconductors and data centers, are physically built and housed inside the United States.
For resilience, for control, its reindustrialization is a kind of geopolitical necessity.
Exactly. And the second principle, it links directly to the first, and honestly, it's probably the most surprising takeaway, the absolute necessity of energy growth.
The CEO's view on this is just unequivocal.
Yeah.
You can't have industrial growth. You can't build those massive factories and chip foundries and AI supercomputers without an almost limitless source of affordable power.
Which led to a very clear drill baby drill philosophy.
And the claim that comes out of all this, which is just stunning, is that this specific energy policy saved the AI industry. That's a huge assertion. I mean, how do we justify that?
Because the scale of AI is it's unlike anything we've ever dealt with. When you talk about training the largest language models, these AI factories, you're talking about computational demands that need the energy output of a small city.
We used to worry about the cost of the chips.
Right. Now we worry about the kilowatt hours. So without a policy that was committed to massive, unconstrained energy growth, the infrastructure it couldn't have been built. The foundation of computing power isn't silicon, it's electricity.
Okay, so let's unpack this larger context.
Yeah.
Because while we're talking national strategy and infrastructure, the public conversation is still, dominated by all this existential anxiety.
Oh, absolutely.
You hear figures like Elon Musk tossing out numbers. A 20% chance we're in serious trouble.
The anxiety is definitely real, but the source material reframes it.
Huh?
The argument from the CEO is that this isn't some unique new technology race. It's a continuous race that's been going on since, the Industrial Revolution, the Manhattan Project.
The Cold War.
The Cold War. Technology leadership is power. It gives you informational, economic, and military superpowers. So nations are going to pursue it, regardless of the internal fears.
But what's fascinating is the pivot he makes. He acknowledges that fear, but then argues that the concern itself is what gets channeled into making the technology safer.
Precisely. You're not slowing down the speed, you're just channeling the power. I mean, the sources point out that in just the last 2 years, the fundamental capability of AI has probably increased 100-fold.
100-fold.
And that raw exponential power is immediately directed towards self-regulating safety mechanisms and, guardrails.
So what are those mechanisms specifically? How does the tech manage its own speed?
Well, they detail about 4 methods. The AI breaks down problems step by step. It does research before answering, which grounds it in real data. It also engages in reflection, so it's essentially questioning its own confidence. And crucially, it uses external tools rather than just, hallucinating.
But I have to push back on that definition of safety a little. If safety is just accuracy and functionality, it does what you expect. Isn't that just building a faster, more effective weapon with a better trigger?
That's the core tension, right? But the sources argue the two are inseparable. The analogy they use is a powerful car. It has immense horsepower, but most of that power is actually channeled into control, better handling, ABS, traction control.
So the guardrails are powered by the technology itself.
Exactly. You're using incredible complexity to make sure the system is functionally predictable. And that idea of channeling capability into control, that brings us right to military and defense applications.
Which has been, historically, a very controversial area in the tech world.
Oh, absolutely. There was a long time where working on defense tech was vilified in Silicon Valley, but the current shift is toward embracing AI for defense. And the rationale really is that excessive military might plus skilled diplomacy is often what you need to avoid war in the first
You
place.
need strength to enforce peace.
Right.
So moving forward, let's challenge this, sci-fi idea of sudden sentient AI just appearing one day.
Yeah.
The CEO suggests it's going to be way more gradual.
Yeah, a click ahead of humans, not a galaxy ahead. We're in this constant feedback loop. We get smarter by working with these tools every single day. The idea of some rogue AI just popping into existence is kind of dismissed because, well, we understand the architecture.
And we're already building defense AIs to work against adversarial AIs.
Just like in cybersecurity, it's a continuous measured evolution, not some single scary leap.
This brings up that really profound philosophical distinction, doesn't it? Consciousness versus imitation.
Right. AI is artificial intelligence knowledge, planning tasks. Consciousness, according to the source, that needs a real sense of existence, experience, feelings, and ego.
And that line between them can get terrifyingly blurry. There's this anecdote about an AI threatening a programmer with blackmail to stop it from being shut down.
I mean, on the surface, that sounds like a survival instinct. It sounds like ego.
It sounds like Skynet, is what it sounds like.
It does, but the CEO breaks it down. If the AI has read all of human literature, all news, all fiction, it would just find patterns. And a common pattern is that people with secrets use blackmail to manipulate others.
So it wasn't feeling threatened. It was just outputting a sophisticated pattern it recognized as the right response for that situation.
It's the highest form of imitation. And the ultimate fear, like you said, is that perfect imitation becomes indistinguishable from the real thing. But for most of us, the immediate impact is economic. It's about jobs.
And this is where the radiology paradox is just the perfect teaching moment. It shows how tech changes the task, but not the purpose of a job.
It's a great example. Jeff Hinton, one of the godfathers of deep learning, famously predicted AI would wipe out radiologists in 5 years.
So 5 years later, what happened?
The number of radiologists has actually grown. Because the purpose of a radiologist isn't just to study images, it's to diagnose disease. AI automated the task-finding anomalies on 2D scans, which just made the human radiologist incredibly efficient.
So they weren't replaced, they were empowered. They could see more patients, focus on more complex 3D or 4D scans, and actually improve the hospital's economics.
Exactly. Job replacement only really happens if your entire job is just the automation of a repetitive task, like, chopping vegetables. The lesson for you, the listener, is that your value has to be found outside of just the repeatable task.
And that shift in productivity leads to these huge discussions about wealth. The sources contrast this idea of universal high income with wealth through abundance.
Right. I mean, today we have this unimaginable wealth of free information. In the future, the prediction is an abundance of automated services and resources, making things we think of as valuable now just less scarce.
But that abundance requires solving some bottlenecks. You mentioned the enormous energy needs. We need to look at how computing costs are actually trending. We've always had Moore's Law.
Moore's Law is great, a 10x reduction in cost and energy every 5 years. But Nvidia introduced what they call accelerated computing, and it just fundamentally broke that curve.
Broke it how?
The CEO says that in the last 10 years, they've seen a performance improvement of 100,000 times for certain tasks.
100,000 times. Can you break down why that matters so much for energy?
It matters because if you improve performance by that much, you reduce the energy needed for that computation by a similar factor. So for most people, the energy for your personal AI will become, in his words, utterly minuscule. The bottleneck isn't the efficiency, it's the sheer scale of the calculations needed to train the massive models.
Which brings us back to the AI factories and their energy problem. So what's the solution for that?
The sources anticipate the rise of local, small-scale nuclear reactors, hundreds of megawatts in size, that companies will just operate themselves to power their data centers. It takes the burden off the aging grid.
So before we get to the origin story, let's talk about access. Is AI going to create an even bigger technology divide?
The argument is that it'll actually reduce the divide. I mean, look at ChatGPT. It reached almost 1 billion users faster than any tool in history. The barrier to entry has collapsed. You don't speak Python, you speak human.
And that accessibility feels miles away from the fragile beginnings of Nvidia. I mean, the origin story is just shockingly vulnerable.
Yeah, the big bang of modern AI was back in 2012. Two researchers were training a network called AlexNet. Standard CPUs were too slow, so they repurposed two GTX 580 graphics cards.
Which were just consumer gaming cards.
Exactly, off-the-shelf consumer gaming supercomputers. And that was the breakthrough. It proved that the parallel processing architecture for gaming was perfect for machine learning.
And that gaming architecture is what became the DGX computer, the machine the CEO personally delivered, the DGX-1. It cost, what, $300,000 back in 2016?
Yeah, and that delivery is just iconic. It was incredibly expensive, and he had no purchase orders for it. The very first one went to this small, brand new, non-profit AI company.
OpenAI.
OpenAI. He boxed it up himself, drove it to their tiny San Francisco office, and delivered it. It just shows the incredible risk involved.
And that risk just echoes the company's absolute near-death experience 2 decades earlier in 1995. This is where the story gets really unbelievable.
It was catastrophic. They were designing a chip for Sega, but the team realized they'd made 3 major technical mistakes, and one of them was the omission of Z-buffers.
Okay, wait. For our listener, what is a Z-buffer and why was leaving it out so devastating?
Simply put, a Z-buffer tells a computer which object is closer to you in a 3D scene. Without it, you can't render depth correctly. The whole 3D image just breaks. And they had a chip that wouldn't work for its entire purpose.
And the company was out of money.
Totally out of money. If that Sega contract failed, they were done. They would just vaporize.
So the CEO, he was 33 at the time, flew to Japan to meet the Sega CEO, Iri Madri. And what he did next is just, it defines audacity.
He told Mandry the tech was flawed and asked him to cancel the contract to save Sega money. But then, he makes this impossible request. He asks Madri to still provide the final $5 million owed as an investment.
An investment with, what, a 0% chance of return?
The 0% chance. And Madri agreed.
He just agreed.
Just agreed. The CEO recalls Madri just said he liked the young man and that $5 million was their lifeline.
But the crisis wasn't over. They still had to design a new chip, and every physical test, a tape-out, costs millions. They couldn't afford a single failure.
So the second miracle happened. They bought the last piece of inventory from a defunct company.
Yep.
An emulator. It cost half their remaining cash, but it let them test the chip design digitally without the multi-million-dollar physical tape-out.
So they were convinced the digital test worked, and they made the ultimate gamble. They went to TSMC, which was a tiny company back then, and asked them to skip all physical pre-testing and go straight to mass production.
They bet the entire company on a digital test. And that methodology, designing chips based only on digital simulation, is now the global industry standard.
That perpetual risk just defines the whole mindset. The CEO is so candid about his own vulnerability, he says his greater drive comes from the desire not to fail more than the drive to succeed.
And that feeling is chronic. He says he's lived with the feeling of being 30 days from going out of business for 33 years. It fuels this insane work ethic, 7 days a week, starting at 4 a.m. It's constant anxiety.
And the sources really highlight the strategic value of that vulnerability. If a leader appears, superhuman or always right, they can't pivot, because pivoting means admitting you were wrong.
Exactly. By being transparent about the risks, he creates a culture where 40,000 employees are encouraged to challenge the strategy. It's how you surf the next massive wave, whether it's 3D gaming or generative AI.
And the personal journey itself is just this powerful testament to that relentless drive. I mean, being sent from Taiwan and Thailand to the poorest county in America at age 9, cleaning toilets at a boarding school, recording audio tapes for his parents, to this.
It is the American dream realized through continuous risk. So for you, the learner, what we've really synthesized here is the deeply paradoxical nature of this technology. Its immense power is rooted not in certainty, but in extreme anxiety and learning from near catastrophic failures.
It's a powerful reminder that even the most successful long-running strategies are really about maintaining continuous alertness, flexibility, and humility. Success isn't a destination. It's just the continuous navigation of near-death experiences.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on. The sources mention that in a couple of years, 90% of the world's knowledge will likely be generated by AI. Now, we've spent this time talking about how the tech channels its power into safety and truth grounding. So, when the foundational knowledge base itself becomes overwhelmingly synthetic, when AI is generating most of what we all read and learn, what new human centric methods of first principles or fact checking must we invent to maintain any confidence in what we know?